Hi, Jeff, Zach. Thanks for joining me.
Hey,
Hey,
Steve.
Steve.
All right. Well, hey, Moody's has come out with some Q4 data and want to talk about some of the trends we were seeing developing last year. Let's put multifamily up first. We saw net absorption go down an average of 45,000 units in the prior quarter to less than one-fifth nationwide. That's making a Q4 a quarter with less than 10,000 units a net of move-ins for the year. Total absorption is about a third of pre-pandemic highs, and that's being driven by a stabilization of demographics, lock-in effect of a substantial single-family housing market. The national apartment vacancy rate went up, but just 20 basis points. That's at 5.4%. Still below the pandemic peak of 5.5. So quick thoughts on what we're seeing coming out of multifam.
I think look, multifamily is kind of this ever evolving asset class, because I think, when you start looking prior to the Great Depression, people were going and trying to do fix and flips and didn't know what they were doing. And I think in a lot of ways, you may be seeing some of that out of this as well. People building too much or trying to over improve in areas and they're just not getting it. Or there's just too much inventory in some of those areas where you're getting these numbers from. I think there's a lot of information that there are questions that come out of this. That while this article has some high points, I think it lacks some of the in depth that we might want to ask and figure out how it applies to us.
Did you say Great Depression?
No, did I?
Do you mean Great Recession?
Did I say depression? I thought I said recession. Sorry.
I was thinking in the 1930s. I was like, man, fix and flips have been going on for a long time.
They actually have been going on for a long time.
Well, I was gonna comment more on what you said about the oversupply because you're seeing a lot. I think what this article is not touching on is the future that's coming down. Everybody and their brother wants to build Class A because I think that's where it is. 95%. This is a one and done. Insulated special class of real estate. Everyone needs a place to live. Blah blah blah. You're seeing a lot of places get overdeveloped.
Yeah.
And you're having too many units delivered in too many urban areas and not enough people. The migration trends have slowed. People aren't moving the same way. You don't have lockdowns in place where you need more space inside of your own home, and you're looking at sunnier, literally and figuratively, because we're in Florida, sunnier skies. So you don't have those migration trends supporting the development that's coming and being delivered. So you have a lot of excess that I think this article doesn't capture. I think you're going to see a correction in multifamily.
For sure.
Cool. Okay. So let's move on really quick here to office. It's been a big story all of last year, the remote work story, which is really actually a hybrid work story. The vacancy story, which last quarter rose to just under 20%, which is a high level. But in my opinion, is really more of a urban core story around places like San Francisco. But some quick thoughts on office, a topic we'll be talking more about in other videos also.
Well, I'll jump right to it, and I'll say that what I've said in past videos. Comment stays the same. The high-end Class A trophy office properties are thriving. That's the space that people want. A lot of companies are forcing employees to come back to the office. They basically said, look, we're done playing around. There's no more games. We're not asking anymore. You come back to the office or you're fired. And so you're going to see a lot more office space return. I think that trends downward sharply. And I think that the better located and better quality products are going to and are doing just fine.
Well, I think there's an affordability component that comes into it as well. For some of these, you're also seeing out of the pandemic and out of the work from home, people have found that they have businesses that they have been able to either really get up and running that maybe were side hustles and now they're their primary sources of income and they need office for. And some of them are expanding. Maybe they don't need 10,000 square feet, but maybe they need space for 3-4 employees, and that could equate to 1,000, 1,200 square feet. So
you mean more than a garage?
yeah, exactly.
literal started in a garage. Now we need to move out of the garage into an office.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all discussed at one point the idea that some of those places that did start in garages are now converting some of their spaces into smaller light industrial because they need some storage component too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that a lot of them need office as well. They're not just going, they need somewhere to put people.
And I'll just throw out the drum I've been beating too is what's not getting covered is the quality of life. I mean, in San Francisco, I'll just hold to it. It's mainly a quality of life issue. People don't want to have to be dealing with homeless and dealing with cars broken into and dealing with high crime rates and dealing with other problems the city has when they can just move to the suburbs or relocate elsewhere where they don't have to deal with those issues. And people really aren't covering that dimension of this. And the strength we're seeing in some suburb markets or some other markets kind of gets glossed over and just throwing this all other under the remote work label, which I just don't think really captures all that's going on. But let's turn to retail. That was steady throughout 2023. The vacancy rate stayed flat at 10.3%. And we're seeing from retail data that consumers have continued spending. And a lot of the retailers, especially the successful ones, have adopted an omni-channel model where they're meeting consumer need by fusing in-person experiences with the ease and accessibility of online shopping. A few quick thoughts on what we're seeing in retail, guys.
Uh, Same comment as previously. The Renaissance occurred years ago, if not, a decade or a decade and a half, when Amazon and web services have kind of they changed the game. You've seen that renaissance. You see that retail is experiential. You see that people want to return to that. They want to go in person, and they're still spending money. You had a lot of that had to be cut off. You have a lot of malls that have disappeared. I'm sure you've seen all over TikTok the spooky vacant malls where there's one retailer out of 200 that are open, and it's literally a horror movie. But you have stuff around the corner where malls are actually being built up. There's a mall outside of DC. They're adding 3 million square feet. 3 million square feet. Retail's doing just fine. It just is a matter of being the right quality asset
Yep.
in the right location.
Look, I'd even add to it, even on the side of, being able to use items on, let's just use Amazon, for example, where you can digitally try it on. We all know that as much as great for showing me what the color of something's going to look like on me potentially, but when you get it, the product is never the same as, it doesn't ever fit the same. It's, so I think, the idea of touch and feel, try on is hard to move from because people's bodies and shapes are so widely different that they still want to see what it looks like in person before they just go spend money on it.
I'll say one other thing about COVID here. Exactly to that point. It looks good in theory. You put it on, you don't like the way it looks on you, despite what a picture says it might look like. Who's tired of running back and forth to the UPS or FedEx store to do these returns all the time? I mean, we got so used to everything having to come to our house because of COVID, and everything we didn't want, we had to go and return at the UPS store. I'm sick and tired of doing that. I've got.
Well, I was going to say, how many times do you actually, or you just forget to take
You
it
mean
back?
like me? You mean like me yesterday? I had a
Oh,
return.
I don't even want to
and
talk about it. I do it all the time.
I
Sad.
walked into the UPS store, shipped my documents, and said, crap, which I think you can put the expletive in instead of the word crap, that I forgot the package that I had to return.
Yep. Believe me, it happens all the time. I try to leave stuff in my car and still forget it. Still forget
Yeah.
to even go to UPS. So.
I mean, I think that's kind of the headline is, retail has really shifted, and the folks that are shifting with those changes are doing pretty well. The folks that have created a model for an online economy that's only partially online, that still needs that physical touch, that physical presence. But let's turn to our last one, industrial. That had a positive net absorption of 8.8 million square feet, and that was after being down 65% in the fourth quarter from a quarter ago. So I think that the story of industrial is still strong, but not as white hot as it was previously. You guys, just quick thoughts on industrial.
Same thing that I've been saying the whole time. I figured that it was a kind of a false narrative. I felt like it was fabricated or it was inflated more than it actually was. That fourth quarter trend being down substantially, I think that's what it really is to the news. I think people have overdeveloped and overbuilt, trying to chase the trend. They're not getting ahead of the trend, and at a certain point, you've got so much capacity and so much unused capacity, you don't need to build anymore. You can just expand into what's existing, and I think you're going to see that trend continue, and that industrial is going to have a hard landing from where it is today.
Well, I think the other side, and this kind of in my mind applies to all asset classes that we just spoke about, is that banks and looking at the side of how they finance stuff and the values of stuff. Zach, I think in a previous video, you mentioned cap rate. I think what's going to occur in the finance market when looking at bank appraisals, you're going to see cap rate ranges that are essentially going to be a range of what your band of investment is today and what it potentially could be if it's stressed down the line. Because you can't imagine, and I don't, and still to this day, I still kind of think is, you can't ever imagine that, where we are today, looking back 3 or 4 years ago, where you had 2% interest rates, somehow rates were just going to artificially, I guess, stay there. That they are never going to go up, but you're getting valuations off those 2%, cap rates off those 2%, and somehow somebody's going to be able to continue buying it for that same amount that somebody else bought for it. So I think, a lot of this has to do with the financing and how financing goes, not just that one particular asset class is going to be impacted, from one thing to the next because of a nuance. I think it's going to be kind of a, broad paint stroke that goes across all these asset classes when looking at them, not just now, but in the future as well.
Well, one other thing we just mentioned about retail and some of the other ones that we discussed, COVID had a major impact. At that moment, everything had to be online, everything had to be warehoused, everything had to be expanded. Everyone saw that opportunity and built to that, without thinking about anything. You see me like the great U.S. war machine, in World War II. We jumped in and didn't really have the military capacity, but you change everything overnight, and all of a sudden we're the mightiest military, and we were able to do it in what, 6 months? And the same thing in COVID. People saw the opportunity and that just built. And people are trending away from that. You're not needing as much warehouse space. People are still going in person and doing things in retail. So you're seeing the industrial class, that kind of was a false narrative. And I think that trend continues.
I'm just going to second that because I think when you look at the economic data, and you also look at the interest rates and stuff, I think we're just kind of getting back to a more normal environment now. Things are finally kind of starting to shake out, and it's taken a little while to us just to readjust to a more normal functioning economy with normal functioning interest rates. And real estate's no exception. It's going to have to function to kind of a normalcy. In a way, things have been abnormal since 2008. Certainly, interest rates have. So I think we're going to have to we're not used to a normal market. We're going to have to get used to it.
We thought it was new normal, and original normal actually returned. So what do you know?
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it, folks. If you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up, click subscribe, and thanks a lot, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Steve.